It was a cold and silent night. The wind moved through the trees, making a low, whistling sound. Far away from the cities, in the lonely lands of Earth's outer colony, lived a man named John Miller. He was a farmer, quiet, strong, and alone. Had no family. He lived in a small wooden house next to his crop fields. His nearest neighbor was 10 miles away. That night, like every other night, he made some soup, checked his machines, and went to bed early. Outside, the sky was dark and stars filled the sky. But then, it happened. Knock, knock, knock. John opened his eyes. He thought he imagined it. Knock. Knock. No, it was real. Someone was at the door. John sat up, alert. Who would come to his door this late? No one ever visited. He slowly picked up the old shotgun next to his bed and walked to the door. He didn't open it right away. Who's there? He called out. No answer. He unlocked the door just a little and peeked through. That's when he saw her, a woman. Pale skin, tired eyes. Not human, at least not fully. Her ears were long and pointed. Her skin had a soft silver glow. She was holding a small child wrapped in cloth. The child's eyes were closed, its face peaceful, but glowing faintly. Blue. John stared at her. She looked weak, scared, frozen. Then she spoke in a soft voice, almost a whisper. If I warm your bed, will you let us stay? John didn't know what to say. Her voice was not seductive. It was desperate. She wasn't offering pleasure. She was begging for shelter. Before he could reply, he heard something else. A rustling sound in the woods behind her. The woman turned her head quickly, holding the child tighter. Please, she said again. They're coming. John looked past her into the darkness. He couldn't see anything, but he felt it, a strange, heavy feeling in the air. Like danger was near, he made a decision. Come in, he said quickly, opening the door wide. She stepped inside. As soon as he shut the door, the wind outside picked up. Something was out there, but it was too late. The door was locked now. John looked at the woman closely. Her clothes were torn, her hands shaking. The child was asleep, but its skin was glowing more brightly now. Sit down, John said, motioning toward the chair. You want food? She shook her head. No, just safety. John nodded and gave her a blanket. She wrapped the child and herself in it and sat near the small fire. Minutes passed. Neither of them spoke. Then John asked, Who are you? What are you running from? The woman looked at him. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She took a deep breath. My name is Lyra. I'm from a dying moon. My kind are hunted. Stolen, sold. My child is special. They want him. I escaped. John said nothing for a moment. He watched the child's face. It didn't look dangerous, just innocent, peaceful. You're not human, he said softly. No, but I'm a mother. Outside, the wind howled louder now. And then, thud, a sound on the roof. John stood up, shotgun ready. Lyra looked terrified. She stood up too, holding the child close to her chest. Don't open the door, she said quickly. They smell fear. John moved to the window, careful not to make noise. He looked outside. Nothing. But then he saw it. Eyes, glowing red eyes in the dark, staring straight at the house from the woods. John's grip tightened on the gun. Who are they? He asked. Hunters, she whispered. Not human. Not alive. They track energy. They track my son. The child moved a little in her arms, still asleep. But now the light from his body grew brighter. They're close, Lyra said. John's heart pounded. He had let strangers into his house. One of them was not even human. And now something dangerous was coming for them. He looked at Lyra. You brought danger to my home, he said. I brought truth, she replied. And maybe your future. Another sound came from outside. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, inhuman. John locked the windows, turned off the lights, and sat down across from Lyra. His mind raced, But deep inside, he knew. This was no ordinary night. That night, everything changed. Asterisk morning came slowly over the hills, painting the sky with orange and gold. John stood near the window, watching the soft light touch the fields. Behind him, silence filled the house. No birds sang, no machines hummed. It was too quiet in the corner of the room. Lyra was still asleep on the old couch, her arms wrapped tightly around her child, who glowed faintly even in daylight. John had not slept. His shotgun rested across his lap, just in case he didn't fully trust her. Not yet, but something deep inside told him she wasn't lying. Her fear was real. Her child was different. And whatever had watched the house last. Night was no ordinary creature. He made coffee and set a cup on the table near her. The smell woke her. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking as if unused to rest. Her skin shimmered slightly in the light. John spoke with a flat voice. "You're lucky. I didn't throw you out." Lyra sat up carefully, her child still asleep. "I wouldn't blame you. What's the child's name, a Navy boy or girl?" "Neither. You wouldn't understand." Trimesh gave a small, tired smile. "Navi is just a light. Pure light born from what's left of my people." John looked away, unsure what to say. The way she spoke was strange but calm, like someone used to sadness. He stepped outside to check his equipment. The air felt heavy, like the sky was watching him. He walked past his tractor and stopped. His tools had been moved, not stolen, not broken, just rearranged. He glanced around. No footprints, no sign of entry. Still, someone had touched his things, or something. He returned inside. Lyra was humming softly to her child. The sound was unlike any song John had ever heard. It made the room feel warmer, safer. "You went outside last night, though." "I didn't move from that couch." "Then who touched my tools?" She looked up, calm as ever. Maybe it was Navi. John stared at the small child, who looked far too peaceful to be wandering around and moving metal. "That's not funny. It's not a joke. Sometimes when Navi dreams, things move. Machines speak. Doors unlock. So, your child is some kind of machine whisperer." "Not exactly. Navi feels the pulse of life in things. Everything has energy. Your machines are just louder than most." John didn't know what to say. He was a man of soil and sweat, not strange words and glowing children. But part of him wanted to understand. He sat down again, watching the child. "Does the kid know what's happening?" Lyra shook her head. "Too young, too fragile. But they'll come again. The hunters don't give up." "What do they want, Navi?" "For power, for war, for trade. They sell what they cannot create." John frowned. He had heard stories from passing traders about space slavers and energy pirates. He always thought they were just that, stories. "You brought this trouble to my doorstep." "I didn't mean to. I just followed the light. This place, it feels different. Safe, maybe." John didn't reply. He wasn't sure if he felt safe anymore that night. He locked the house tighter. He set up traps around the barn and added extra fuel to the backup power core. Just in case. Before going to bed, he checked on them one more time. Lyra was awake, watching the stars through the window. Her eyes reflected the sky, like they remembered it. "Do you miss your home every day?" "But it doesn't exist anymore. Burned, broken, forgotten." John felt something in his chest. Not pity, not fear, something heavier. "You should sleep. We'll talk more tomorrow." Lyra turned toward him. "Thank you for not turning me away." "I haven't decided yet." "But you didn't say no." He paused at the doorway. The child moved in her arms and whispered something in a strange language. The lights in the room flickered for a second. John didn't ask what it meant. He just went to his room, turned off the lamp, and lay there in silence. Outside, the wind had stopped. The stars watched quietly from above, and deep in the forest, something else had started moving again. Rain came gently that morning, soft drops falling over dry ground. The sky was gray, and the air smelled like wet earth. John stood under the porch roof, a warm cup in his hand, watching the clouds move low across the sky behind him. Inside the house, Lyra whispered to her child in a language John still couldn't understand. It wasn't harsh or loud. It sounded like water running over smooth stones. John took a deep breath and stepped back inside. He was tired. His mind hadn't rested since the night she arrived. Something had changed in his home. It felt like a storm was building, even though the rain was quiet. He sat at the table. Lyra looked at him and nodded once, as if waiting for him to speak first. "You owe me the truth. I know no riddles this time, none." She stood, walked slowly to the chair across from him, and placed Navi gently in the blanket on the couch. The child stirred once, then returned to sleep, breathing with a soft glowing pulse. Lyra looked older in the morning light. Not old in age, but in pain. Her hands shook as she folded them in her lap. Her voice, when it came, was steady but filled with something heavy. "We lived on a moon called Villari, a place of blue grass and silver skies. My people were called the Thalan. We lived in peace for hundreds of cycles. No wars, no greed. We had no need for weapons." She paused only to breathe. "But peace is not protection. Others came from the Black region. They came in silence and struck fast. They didn't come for land. They came for us, for our light, for the energy inside our bodies." John's eyes narrowed. "Energy. We carry life in a different way. Our blood hums with light. Our children shine even before they walk. To others, we are fuel, weapons, batteries for machines they cannot build." John clenched his jaw but said nothing. He had heard wild stories before. Now those stories were sitting in his kitchen. They took many of us, turned us into living cores. Our minds lost. Our bodies used to power ships and stations. I ran. I was already carrying Navi. I knew they would come for my child when the light awakened, and you've been running ever since across 5 systems, hiding, begging, waiting for the child to sleep and hoping they don't wake the sky. John looked at the small figure on his couch. So small, so quiet. Yet something about the child made the room feel warmer, like the sun had reached inside the walls. What's so special about Navi? Lyra hesitated for the first time. Her eyes dropped to the wooden floor. Navi is not just light. Navi is rare. A source that could bend space if shaped correctly. With the right machine, my child could open gates between stars, move armies across systems in seconds. Whoever controls that power will rule more than planets. John stood up, pacing slowly across the room. "So that's why they're hunting you. That's why they watched my house." "Yes, and if they catch you, we'll be drained. The child will be locked in a shell. My mind will be erased. My child will never laugh, never grow, just power. Forever." John looked out the window again. The rain had stopped. Only silence remained. "Why come here?" "Because something called me. A voice, a feeling. Your land is old. The soil remembers. I felt it when we passed over your fields. It sang to Navi. I thought maybe it was safe. You thought wrong maybe. But you still opened the door." John said nothing. He sat down again. His hands were rough, stained from years of farming. He had fought nature his whole life, but never an enemy like this. "You still have time to send us away, you think? I could sleep at night after that. People would, and not most people." Lyra nodded. Her eyes softened. For the first time, John noticed a small scar under her left eye, like a burn that had healed slowly. "There's more, isn't there?" "Yes. Last night, Navi touched your machine without waking. It responded. It tried to speak. Your land is not just old. It's alive. Your machines are part of something older than Earth's tech. They remember things long buried." John frowned. He had built those machines himself from scrap and trade. There was nothing special about them. "So what now? You decide. If we stay, the hunters will return. If we leave, you live. But you'll never see this truth again, and if I fight, then you stand beside the last of the Thalan. And maybe, just maybe, you help change more than one life." John looked at her, then at Navi. Then out the window again. Rain had stopped falling, the sky was clearing. Something inside him shifted. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. In that morning, for the first time in years, the air on his land felt new. The sun was high, but the air stayed cold. Birds flew in wide circles overhead as if confused. Animals that usually wandered near John's fields were nowhere to be seen. The land felt too still. John worked in silence, checking his water pumps. Lyra stood by the barn with Navi in her arms. The child looked around, eyes scanning the trees. Something in the wind made them uneasy. John looked up. He didn't see anything at first. Then the sky darkened. A ship broke through the clouds. Black metal, no lights, shaped like a blade. It moved without sound, no engines, no warnings. It was a Hunter-class drop vessel, old war design. Ruthless Lyra ran toward the house. John dropped his tools and followed. They both knew what this was inside. John grabbed the shotgun and opened his emergency cabinet. 2 pulse grenades and a flare gun. Not enough to fight a full team, but maybe enough to stall them. The ship landed in the field without damaging a single blade of grass. Perfect precision. The bottom hatch opened. 4 figures stepped out, tall, covered in armor like bones. Their eyes glowed with red light. No words, no greetings. They walked straight toward the house. John stood at the front door. His hands didn't shake. His eyes didn't blink. He had faced wild storms and machine failures, but this was different. This was war. Walking up to his porch, one of the hunters stopped a few meters away. Its voice came through a speaker built into its chest. Surrender the Thalon and the source unit. You have 10 seconds. John raised the shotgun. She's under my roof. You step on my land like this, you answer to me. The hunter took 1 step forward. John fired once. The blast hit the chest plate. It didn't fall, but it stopped. The others raised their weapons. Blue sparks formed in their hands inside the house. Navi's glow changed. It grew brighter. Lyra held the child close, but something was different. The air in the house felt alive. The lights flickered. The wooden walls creaked like they were under pressure. John fired again. This time the shot hit the headpiece of the nearest hunter. It cracked. Sparks flew out. The thing fell back with a loud crash. Then the house shook from inside. A wave of light burst out like a silent scream. Everything around the child lifted into the air for a second. The hunters outside froze. Their armor lights blinked in strange patterns. Their weapons shut off. One of them tried to move but fell to its knees. John felt it in his bones. A pressure that wasn't pain but too strong to ignore. Like the earth itself was speaking. Lyra stepped out of the house. Her eyes glowed the same color as her child's. Now leave this place. You will not take him. One hunter aimed its arm cannon. John threw a pulse grenade. The explosion was small but enough to distract. Lyra raised her hand. The ground under the hunter cracked. Vines shot up from the soil, wrapping around its limbs. The machine struggled but couldn't break free. John had no words left. He had never seen power like this. Not from her. Not from anything. The remaining hunters activated recall beacons. Their bodies flashed and disappeared in a shimmer of smoke. The broken one remained behind. Twitching silence returned. John lowered his weapon. His land was scorched in places. His barn door had melted halfway, but his house stood. And they were still alive. Lyra turned to him. Her face looked calm, but her chest rose and fell fast. They know where we are now. More will come. Stronger ones. John wiped sweat from his brow. Then we make a plan. You still have time to run, so do you. But you're still here. She nodded. Navi rested quietly in her arms now, the glow fading back to a soft shimmer. John looked at the burned field. At the twisted body of the hunter left behind. He had tried to live quietly, alone. Now the universe had landed at his doorstep and he had answered the door. The broken hunter machine lay half buried behind the barn. Its red eyes no longer glowed. Its armor had cooled. Rain had washed away the ash, but the marks on the ground remained. John spent the morning cleaning up what he could. He worked with steady hands, but his thoughts moved in circles. He had never planned for war. He had never planned to protect a mother and her glowing child from sky hunters inside the house. Lyra sat on the floor with Navi beside her. The child was awake and watching the ceiling with quiet wonder. Fingers danced in the air, drawing shapes only they could understand. Lyra called for John to come in. Her voice was soft but clear. He wiped his hands and stepped inside. She motioned to the chair across from her. You never asked why I stayed. I figured you had nowhere else, that too. But also because you didn't ask me to leave. John took a seat and leaned back. He was tired. Not from work, but from the weight of decisions. I'm not sure if it was courage or stupidity sometimes. They're the same thing. Lyra reached out and placed a thin silver device on the table. It looked like a bracelet but glowed faintly around the edges. What's that? A translator. It holds memories too, from my people. I want you to see them. John hesitated, then picked it up. The metal adjusted to his wrist without resistance. For a moment, everything went still, then images poured into his mind. A moon with silver skies and cities made of light. Children floating above grass fields. Lyra, younger and laughing. Her voice carried stories of stars and wind. Then fire. Screams. Shadows falling from the sky. Machines harvesting light from living beings. A world dying too fast. John pulled the bracelet off and placed it gently on the table. I saw it. Now you understand. John looked at Navi, who sat cross-legged on the rug. The child watched him closely, head tilted. Their eyes were clear, calm, and far. Older than their face. Navi stood and walked over to him without speaking. The child reached up and touched John's rough hand with small glowing fingers. A warmth spread through his skin, not heat but something deeper. A kind of welcome, they trust. You now. John didn't speak. He couldn't. Something in that touch reached parts of him he thought were gone. The empty parts that had stayed hollow since the day he buried his wife. Since the long silence that followed later that day, John showed Lyra the hidden mine shaft behind his property. It had been closed for years, forgotten under thick vines and rusted hinges. He had used it once for storage before storms damaged the roof. We can hide here if they come again. Lyra walked inside, her hand on the damp stone walls. She nodded slowly. It will work. It feels still, old, like it was never touched by machines. They spent hours reinforcing the walls, clearing space, moving supplies. John taught Lyra how to reload his pulse traps. She taught him how to cloak body heat with native plants. Navi helped without words. Sometimes tools moved across the ground on their own when no one was looking. That night, they sat together outside. No fire. Just stars above and wind in the trees. Lyra turned to John and spoke without looking at him. That changed since the first night. So have you. I never trusted humans, but Navi likes you. That means something. Do you? I trust my child. That's enough. John didn't push for more. He watched Navi lie on the grass, drawing glowing lines in the air that vanished as soon as they formed. Do you think they'll come back soon? Yes? Will we survive? I don't know. But I know this. If we die, we do it as more than strangers. John nodded. He had lived alone for years, talking only to machines and dirt. Now he felt something stir in his chest again. Not fear, not duty. Something warmer. Navi stood and walked toward him again. The child spoke for the first time in Earth's language. Father. John looked at Lyra, unsure. The child chose the word. I didn't teach it. John swallowed hard and nodded once. He placed a hand gently on Navi's head. Then I guess we have a lot to protect. Asterisk. Clouds gathered in the sky again, but this time it was not rain that followed. John rode into the village for supplies. It was the first time he had left his land since Lyra arrived. The old truck moved slow on the dirt road, wheels shaking over every rock. He kept checking the mirror, as if something might follow him. The village was small. Just a few homes, a general store, and one dusty fuel station. People there knew John by name, but never by heart. He was the quiet farmer with strong hands and tired eyes as he walked into the store, heads turned. Not in greeting. In silence, Mason stood behind the counter. Gray beard, faded cap, eyes that never missed a thing. John dropped a list on the table and spoke with a flat voice. Need fuel cells, medkits, and spare filters. Mason raised one eyebrow. Big order for a man who works alone. I'm working on something new. Mason nodded but didn't move. The room stayed still. A young boy at the back of the store slipped quietly outside. A woman near the window whispered something under her breath. John felt it then. The kind of stillness that only comes before a betrayal. He stepped outside and found two village men standing near his truck. Their arms were crossed. One of them held a hunting rifle. You hiding something out there, Miller? No more than usual, he kept. His tone calm but firm. They didn't look convinced. We saw lights last night. Bright ones, strange ones. Then a ship came down near your land. Probably just smugglers. Mason stepped out from the shop with a worn tablet in his hand. He held it up so everyone could see. This came through last night. System-wide alert. High reward for a Thalan fugitive and her source child. Bounty says alive is preferred, but dead still pays. John stared at the screen. The image was blurry, but it was Lyra, holding Navi. The reward was enough to buy land, ships, even a new life. You know anything about this? No, you sure I, said Noon. Of the men stepped forward. If you're harboring something dangerous, you're risking all of us. John's hands tightened. Not into fists, into control. The old John might have fought. The new John knew better. I suggest you stay away from my land. There's nothing for you there. The boy who had slipped outside earlier was now speaking into a comm device. His voice carried across the open air. Coordinates confirmed. Target located. Send pickup crew. John moved fast. Faster than anyone expected. He reached the truck, started the engine, and drove off without looking back. By the time he returned home, the sky had darkened again. Lyra was waiting near the gate. They know, yes, they called for a pickup crew. It's only a matter of time now. She nodded and turned toward the house. We need to move into the shaft. John helped carry supplies underground. Navi walked ahead, leading without speaking. The child's glow lit the path as if they had walked it before inside the mine. John activated the energy field he had built days ago. It shimmered like air on fire. Lyra looked around and gave a short nod. This will hold for a while. John sat down against the wall. His breathing was heavy, not from work, from anger. From betrayal. I built that town's wells, fixed their machines, gave them seeds when their crops failed, and now they would sell you for credits. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. That night, they stayed inside the shaft. No fire, no sound. Just waiting. Hours later, John heard the sound of ships. In the sky. Not one, 3, they didn't land. Not yet. They circled, scanned, searched. The village had given away his world for money. Now they walked to him again and placed a hand on his arm. They fear what they do not know. John looked at the child. For the first time, he realized Navi's voice no longer echoed like a machine. It sounded human now, young, clear and new. I do not fear you. He placed a hand on Navi's shoulder. Then, we'll make them see what we are really made of. Asterisk. The sky turned red before evening. Not from the sun. From fire. 3 hunter ships hovered above the tree line. Their shadows stretched over the land like claws reaching for something pure. John stood at the edge of the mine shaft entrance with his shotgun across his back. The ground beneath his boots felt heavier than ever before. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes calm, her face hard. Navi waited just behind them, silent but glowing brighter with every passing minute. They are scanning, trying to find our signal. They're close. How long before they land? Not. John then looked at his land. This was where he buried his wife. This was where he planted the first seeds after the last drought. This was more than soil. It was his life, he was not going to give it away inside the house. The old power core hummed like a heartbeat. Lyra had helped him tune it using Navi's energy. It now pulsed with something far stronger than electricity. It was alive. The first ship dropped low. Landing gear deployed. Black smoke hissed from its sides. 10 hunters stepped out. No mistakes. No hesitation. They moved in perfect sync toward the house. John held his ground. "You sure about this?" "I am." Lyra stepped forward and raised her hands. A ripple moved across the field. The plant stood taller. The wind stopped. Even the machines in the barn went quiet. Navi stepped between them. "Let me speak." John turned to Lyra. "What does that mean?" "Child is ready." Navi walked forward into the open field. The hunters saw the glow and began to fan out. Their weapons charged. Lights on their arms blinked in battle rhythm. Then the sky cracked. A sound like thunder split the air as Navi raised both hands. Light poured from their body like water from a broken dam. Trees bent away. Earth trembled. The hunters froze, blinded by what stood before them. "You want power. You want control. But you cannot have both." The voice was everywhere. It came from Navi but echoed across the field, into the sky, down into the roots of the earth. The machines in the hunter ship shut down. Their engines failed. Weapons powered off. One hunter raised a blade and ran forward. John stepped in its path. He fired once. The blast threw the machine backward across the field. It didn't rise. More hunters came. This time from the second and third ship. 20 now, maybe more. They didn't stop. They didn't fear. Lyra stepped forward and joined hands with Navi together. They formed a wall of light and wind. Nothing could pass. The hunters fired, but their shots dissolved before reaching the shield. John moved behind them and launched the signal flare, a message he had prepared just in case. A warning. A call for anyone listening. The hunters began to break through. Step by step, inch by inch, the shield shook. The ground split open. Fire shot from cracks that hadn't existed before. Then the old barn doors burst open. From inside came the machines John had buried years ago. Mining drones, harvest bots, powered now by something ancient. They moved with speed and purpose, slamming into the enemy with full force. John stood at the center of it all. Dirt on his face, fire at his back, his world breaking apart, and still he fought. He fought for a child that was not his, but called him father. For a woman from the stars who found peace on his soil. For the land that had always stayed silent until now. The last hunter fell just before sunrise. Smoke covered the sky, but the light from Navi still shone through. John fell to one knee. He could barely breathe. Lyra knelt beside him. "It is over for now." Avi stepped forward. Their eyes no longer glowed. They looked older now. Still a child, but something had changed. "We cannot stay. The signal went beyond this world. Others will come." John stood slowly. "Then you run again." "No, we go forward. This time to build, not to hide." Lyra turned to him with eyes full of something deeper than sorrow. "You saved more than us. You saved what we could become." A Navi walked to him one last time and wrapped small arms around his waist. "Goodbye, father." John said nothing. He only placed a hand on their back and nodded once. The ship that arrived to take them away was silent, white and smooth. No weapons, no scars. They stepped inside, and just like that, they were gone. The land stayed quiet for a long time. John looked out over the fields, burned, broken, but alive. That night changed everything, not because they left, but because something stayed behind. Hope.